You are watching Xirtus.
My issue is just kind of like this mentality of that it's either or, like, because a lot of us, the way that we got into sync in the first place was through conspiracy theory. A lot of us, that was our jumping
Yeah.
off point, and then we found places where it's like this kind of transcends this way of thinking, and so it doesn't necessarily negate that conspiracies go on. It just
Yeah.
recognizes that it goes deeper and that there's another side to things. And so I personally kind of feel that conspiracy theory is kind of a shell, that if you penetrate that shell, there's something else that kind of comes through, and you can kind of, that line between like the patterns that exist in nature we see in our own goings on, you could find the same thing that you find. My rabbi likes to say this to me about the work that I do. He's like, you could find the same thing in a leaf if you look deeply enough. But and the way I put it is, I'm like, well, a media allows me to kind of not just have that insight, but to be able to share that insight in almost like it reminds me of like El Dorado, when you like leave El Dorado and like your gold that you found turns to dirt, and it's like, this is like the gold that you found, you can actually like bring it with you somehow. It's like to be able to get a snapshot of this place that you went to. It's like Dr. Seuss had these, like what he called unorthodox taxidermy, which is like creatures from his stories, but they would be like, you mount it on your wall. So you're like, tell somebody, I went on this crazy psychedelic safari, and they're like, that doesn't sound believable. There was wang doodles and rotten vermicious canids, and then you can point at your wall and be like, well, look, I brought one back with me. And it's like, that's the idea, at least. But this actually feels like that. Like, I actually have a hornswoggler. He's right over there.
Well, I just like the point is, it's like not a very good explanation of who you are, Jake. And so maybe you kind of want to explain a bit about like, what is Synchromysticism? Who are you? Give like a more accurate, authentic introduction.
Give the 2024 audience the intro to who is Jake Kotze.
Yeah, so I guess it's just, to me, like, I've always been fascinated with synchronicity, and Synchromysticism would be my best attempt at describing what it is. And then I guess because of my interest in film and media, I realized you can use that to investigate and show synchronicity. And the deeper I went into that journey, because I guess, where myself, I'm also, I start with, as a youth, conspiracy theory being very integral to, things that put me on this path, and the occult and mystical stuff. So, 9/11 also played a big role, and the synchronicities with 9/11 were so huge that I started making videos about those, because I just thought these were mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's where my work sort of started getting people's attention and growing, and my own wrestling with trying to figure out, is there some sort of agenda behind 9/11? Is there some sort of, and I'm trying to understand it as a ritual, and this whole process of it sort of moved me into my current understanding of synchronicity, which is a very spiritual one, and a very I feel like it's a natural phenomenon. And this sync video, to me, is like a way of showing that this thing is real and is organic and is just a part of reality. So I just find it fascinating that you can actually, in a way, prove, but the only problem with the prove part is that you kind of have to be on the same frequency to experience it the way that I intend. If not, then you start seeing it as part of a conspiracy or an agenda, or that, maybe there's some nefarious plot that I'm part of, kind of thing. But yes, Synchromysticism is just my best attempt at trying to explain what synchronicity is. I just called it mysticism because I wanted to make it clear that that's sort of the angle from which I come, and which Sync points me towards.
Right.
For me, I think synchronicity is where you get when conspiracy theory ends. You keep going down that rabbit hole, and you start to realize that there are things that cannot possibly be orchestrated on a human level. So, and then you start to see synchronicity and read synchronicity. So I just feel like the guy in the video,
I love it.
Bless his heart, is
Yeah, I mean,
So,
doing
like,
that.
imagine what could be cooler. So this is the thing about it. So like you spend your life trying to make synchronicity aware, your awareness, it's your synchronicity awareness soapbox. That's right. You're just, hey, look, have you noticed that there's some synchronicity in the world? And eventually it gets to the point where this guy is making, he doesn't realize it, but he's trying to tie together synchronicities, and you're part of them at that point. Like, so it's built, it's like, that's the most beautiful
the circle of life.
It
Yeah.
really is, right?
And I think it's been around long enough now that it's, it seems almost, in this day and age of the internet, it's almost mythic. Something that's like 10, 15 years old is almost not part of the myth.
Right.
Like, that was just YouTube stuff. That was just YouTube videos. But there's it's like, even in the early days of YouTube that I uploaded some of that early 9/11 Stargate stuff. So I guess even that stuff feels now like it's part of the myth,
Right. Even DuckTales, you could find profundity in DuckTales. And so, Jake, at different times, especially early on with my own approach to synchronicity and some of the people I'm surrounded by, when you look up the definition of synchromysticism, you'll get some slightly different definitions. Some of them will say these could be coming from, secret societies or whatever, but they include that they could be a natural phenomenon as well. Your definition is one of finding profundity in the mundane. And that's something that I've had difficulty with at times. But as time goes by, I think I get a sense more and more of what it is that you're pointing at and the way that you articulate that. It's kind of like with Wilhelm Reich, the way he would use mysticism politically, I didn't really have a sense of initially. And I used to have kind of an aversion to that because I'm like, well, you're treating it that it's like that mysticism is this extremely problematic thing. And then I saw that he was applying that to political fanaticism in the way that people would kind of like, they'll take a symbol and they'll project profundity into that symbol in their own way. And that's a certain direction of a certain type of mysticism, but mysticism itself is much deeper than that. I think that's kind of a limited representation of what mysticism really amounts to, because people's own religious experiences obviously is much different than when they're embracing a political ideology that has its sets of symbols that they're kind of hypnotized by. And so it depends on what, like, religion itself is one thing, organized religion where it decides to go is something else. Like religion to be reunited with, it speaks to spirituality, but we often find that materialism plays into religious organizations more than spirituality does a lot of the time, and it just becomes a vehicle for that under the guise, But yeah, my favorite videos of yours, I just want to say, is like, I like all of them, but I like the ones that I love your narration, but when you get to a place where it's just flowing, where the clips kind of speak to themselves, where and it allows you the room and the space to make the connections yourself. And so you're kind of like encouraging people to have insights on their own. Like, you're not putting everything in there for them. Like, watching your videos over the years, I always have these aha moments, some videos more than others where, and oftentimes when I think of an actor or an actress in particular, like, depending on which one, like, like say it's Patricia Arquette or something, I'm immediately at hairpiece. Like, I'm thinking of all of these different points, and I'm like, her totem as this hairspray bottle, and like I'm visualizing all of that. And so my associations, like, for a lot of actors and actresses, come from you. Like, it's synchronistically, I'm thinking of Jennifer Connelly walking to a pier at the end of, or in the midst of so many films, I'm like, why is she always walking to the pier? What does the pier mean? Does it mean the same thing for each? Like, is that all like, hero with 1,000 faces kind of thing?
I mean, even when you say pier, it's like seeing, and the eye on like Requiem for a Dream with the pier. I just feel like, I don't know, it's
the monolith, right? I mean,
Buena Vista
pyramid.
Yeah, the Disneyland California Adventure, the Buena Vista Pier now, which is pretty good.
Oh,
yeah, and you can see like the upside down thing. Here's your video from the 17 years ago.
Yeah, this is the first one. I wanted to bring this up. I wanted to say,
Mm.
well, because what I do, Jake, I don't know if you follow me on Twitter or whatever, CryptoK, is a lot of date work. You know, how many days, how many weeks
Oh, yeah.
between days and stuff.
Yeah.
And so one of the most fascinating things to me is looking at your video here, the 9/11 Pyramid Mega Ritual, your first video, which you published on February 28th of 2007. And if you go and you check that against, of course, 9/11, it's 18 days into the 66th month. So that means it's 6 + 6 + 6 days into the 66th month after 9/11 that you published this video.
Mhm.
So obviously you didn't do that on purpose.
That would be so
the
base.
whole-
Though.
the whole
All right,
thing-
can't you,
The whole point of this is that
let's
there's
pretend he
stuff
did
going
though,
on
because that would be like pretty.
Yeah.
Jake, how did you come up with that?
Maybe he did. I actually
Well, I mean,
I should ask you, did you do that on purpose?
no, I mean, not consciously. No,
Yeah.
I don't remember any specific significance about the date I published that.
It was interestingly the last
mean,
day of February. So
Sure, Jake. No, I'm just kidding.
To me, reality, it's kind of like it's all one thing. It's like one consciousness. And sync is just sort of the material aspect of reality, sort of unveiling the fact that everything is connected. So I feel like anything you do, if you look at it through the synchronicity lens, will have that aspect where you see connections between things, because that's actually reality. So it's kind of like you're flipping the tapestry of life. At the front of it, it looks like separate things, but then you flip it and all the little fibers are connected, all the threads are connected. So sync just makes that visible. But I think it's actually, just because we use our minds and language and symbols to sort of understand experience, it looks like parts, it looks like separate parts, but it's actually this united, unified thing. It's like one thing, like the mystics talk about, but sync makes that visible. And then that's just what we're starting to wrestle with when we investigate synchronicity, is that reality is actually like synchronicity, and our day-to-day world, the way we experience it, actually it's kind of just like a gravity thing. Like gravity was just normally there, but wasn't really interpreted as gravity until somebody went, things are falling down to the ground, there's this force. So it's the natural aspect of reality that we're starting to integrate into our everyday awareness, and that's synchronicity.
Xirtus.